2 of my Mervin Reads Illustrated Guide ran a bit long, as I'm sure you guys saw. That was just a little excessive. I just didn't want to do it all in little pieces. I wanted to get the interview out of the way. So now we're moving on to the next part. I'm hoping to keep this under 20, but I ramble, as I'm sure you guys saw. So, episode 3 of Mervin Reads for the official illustrated guide. Next up, vampires. Yeah, we're getting into the main meat where there's actually might be something informing us of something new. Okay, this is just all the vampire basics that she's giving. So, let's just jump right in, shall we? Why does she always insist on starting off with a bang? While the saga's vampires share certain similarities with the vampires of legend, they have many more unique characteristics and supernatural abilities that are specific to the world of Twilight. Okay, 2 things. Did you really just say, my vampires are so unique and special, therefore they're better? Because those are seriously the tones that I get from what you just said there. 2, you just said the S word. You just described them as supernatural. Even though you have stated time and time again that your vampires are science-based. And I'm not talking about fantasy, okay? I know this is a fantasy, therefore, by default, they should be considered supernatural, except they're not. Supernatural does have a specific definition for vampires. That's Dracula. Science-based is Underworld or Blade. And as Meyer always said, her vampires. She constantly tries to use scientific reasoning, which we all know how much she succeeds, but she's constantly describing them as science-based, and then out of nowhere she says they're supernatural. You cannot combine science and magic in the same story like this. Again, she shoots her suspension of disbelief down every time she tries to write stuff like this. Okay, the first section are physical characteristics. I'm not really sure what more she could say. 70% of her books are nothing but describing their physical characteristics. Why do we need another section on it in the guide? As vampires, they retain a close physical resemblance to their human form. What? No, they don't. According to you, once they change, they're almost unrecognizable because of the heightened beauty nonsense you do. She's trying to sound scientific. The vampires in the sunlight. The cellular membrane of the vampire is not as soft or permeable in a human cell. It has crystalline properties that cause the surface of vampire skin to react prismatically, giving the vampire a glitter-like shimmer in sunlight. You know, I've gone on about how when she tries to sound scientific, she just mostly falls flat on her face, but the thing right here is she just contradicted every single thing she always says about the sparkling. A glitter-like shimmer does not imply the walking disco balls you consistently describe. Oh. Yeah, these 2 sections, one right after the other. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's start. Beauty. That's number 2. The common factor of beauty among vampires is mostly due to this crystalline skin. How? How does that work? That doesn't mean that. The perfect smoothness, gloss, and even color of the skin give the illusion of a flawless face. No, it gives the illusion of uncanny valley. It gives the illusion of a porcelain doll. That's not attractive. It creates an angular effect that heightens the perception of beauty. Well, that's assuming that people think complete symmetry is appealing. I know they've done studies of beauty that symmetry is generally looked upon as beautiful, but not everyone thinks it is. And then the last paragraph. Like humans, vampires are drawn to beauty. When choosing a human for the transformation process, vampires are as likely as humans to be motivated by a beautiful face and body. Not only is that, as always, Meyer being utterly shallow, but that also pretty much is Meyer beating us over the head without actually saying names that Bella is the most beautiful human being on Earth, considering every vampire in the entire Twilight universe wanted to bite her. Thank you for that. But the beauty thing, we're expecting that, okay? We've come off of that. But here, pretty much right here, she's saying vampire beauty is the epitome of beauty. It's the height. Never mind personal taste or anything like that. No. They are the most beautiful things on Earth, and nobody thinks differently in her universe, okay? Then she goes on to the next section. I'm going to read it all. It's short. Okay? I want you to listen to me. It's talking about their skin tone. Yeah, I think you know where this is going. Pale vampire skin is a product of vampire's venom transformative process. The venom leaches all pigment from the skin as it changes from human skin into the more indestructible vampire form. Regardless of original ethnicity, a vampire's skin will be exceptionally pale. The hue varies slightly, with darker-skinned humans having a barely discernible olive tone to their vampire skin, but the light shade remains the same. All forms of skin pigmentation, freckles, moles, birthmarks, age marks, scars, and tattoos disappear during the transformation. Where do I even begin with that one? That is, wow. She just came right out and said it, didn't she? That white is the epitome of beauty. She just outright said they get bleached when they're turned. As always, you know, Colin racist is the new Godwin these days, but that's pretty damn racist. Or at the very least, just ignorant. If I were being generous, I'd just say ignorant, or bad writing, putting your own personal preferences in it with no distinction to anyone else's. But when Meyer writes stuff like this, it's like the golden calf comment. I'm supremely uncomfortable right now. I'm uneasy. I feel just icky reading this. Alright, and of course, I have more to say on this. This is also creepy. Because any distinguishing marks that make you you, not your skin tone. I mean, like freckles. I have freckles. I'm covered in them. Birthmarks you had. A wrinkle you had. A scar you had. Moles. All of it. It's gone. You are made into basically this. There's no distinction. And of course, she already contradicted her first sentence. As vampires, they retain a close physical resemblance to their human form. No, they don't, obviously, considering you say their skin turns to crystal. They immediately bulk up with muscle mass because of that. And they lose all distinguishing marks and scars. I can understand the scar thing vanishing, but freckles? Moles? Birthmarks? Everything that makes a person them, unique in a physical way? That's just creepy. That this vampirism, the thing that she holds up as the greatest thing ever, it turns you into an assembly line monster. And she wants this? She thinks it's awesome? And of course, we couldn't go without a complete fail. Scars and tattoos are not a form of skin pigmentation. Tattoos are ink injected under the skin. How does vampire venom get rid of that? This is not an issue of turning you white. No, this is an issue of just her being stupid. Alright, I'm moving away from that because that's just awful. That section is awful. And we're only 2 pages into this. I can tell already this is probably going to be another 2-parter. Jeez, I'm so sorry. Continuing on. There's a quote down here at the bottom. From Meyer. While vampires are frightening and deadly, they are also alluring. They can be beautiful, they can be sophisticated, they have qualities that we actually aspire to. Eternal youth, strength, and intelligence. The dual side to vampires makes them hard to resist. Says you. They can be beautiful. Well, to you. I don't find your descriptions very beautiful at all. They can be sophisticated. When have I... Show me an example and I'll believe you. Your vampires are not sophisticated. They have qualities we actually aspire to. I do not aspire to eternal youth. Thank you. I aspire to aging gracefully, not eternal youth. Strength of character maybe, but you're talking about physical strength and intelligence. Okay, we aspire to that, but your vampires are all dumb as the substance they're made of. So, again, I hate the way Stephenie Meyer talks. It's awful. I'm not talking about the eye color. The eye color bugs me because she treats eyes like fuel gauges. It makes no sense. Why do their eyes turn gold if they drink animal blood? And why do they turn black if they haven't eaten? Why do they... It's like a fuel gauge. It's stupid. My vampire teeth. If you've seen my other DOS rantings, you know I've already ranted about vampire fangs. Fangs. I've got a link to it right there. Meyer's vampire teeth make no sense, so I'm not going to comment down here because I've already ranted about it right there. I think Meyer likes the word lubricate. She says it a lot. I'm just quoting her own books now. Petrification. If a vampire remains unmoving enough for over thousands of years, dust actually begins to petrify in response to the venom-like liquids that lubricate his eyes and skin. What does that even mean?
God, no. Yeah. I don't even know what that is.
What the hell? I have no idea what you just said. But eventually a vampire's skin begins to appear thin and translucent like the skin of an onion. Oh, didn't she describe Aro as having onion skin in New Moon? You're real original, Meyer. And also, this implies that Aro, Caius, and Marcus just sat around for thousands of years. They don't move. Sitting still, I understand, but they do move. They don't just sit there and stare at the floor. They move. It makes no sense that they would petrify, that they would get dusty. I have no idea what that sentence says. I really don't get it. And also what makes no sense is the strength of the skin is not compromised and their eyesight is not compromised by the milky film, whatever it is, that Aro and the Volturi have. How does it not compromise them? What's the point then? They're supposedly petrifying, but nothing is compromised? How does that work? Either they are or they aren't. And then vampire venom. I agree with people. Venom is the new midichlorians. This is ridiculous. It basically, if you have a fluid in your body, lymph, anything, it's venom now. So, basically, Meyer's implying Edward's semen is venom. That's nice. But also, again, she shoots stuff from the foot because she doesn't know basic biology. Most notably absent is the circulatory system. You know, the system necessary for Edward to get an erection so he can pork Bella. You thought just covering yourself with, oh, his semen's venom now, so that makes it legal. No. Meyer, doesn't work like that. And if you'd stop giggling like an idiotic 12-year-old and actually got over yourself enough to say, like, the word penis, you might know this. They do not grow older, taller, or wider, or experience any other physical change, including unconsciousness. 1, wider. You could have just said they don't gain weight. 2, unconsciousness is not a physical change, Meyer. Next section of the title, abilities and limitations. Limitations? Oh, humor me. Yeah, the whole first part of this is just how much better vampires are than you. I hope you are sufficiently cowed. This writing's bad. She keeps switching using the his and her thing. Like, she's been saying this whole time, a vampire, his eyes, his is the default these days. You could say his or her, if you're issue, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, only another supernatural creature has the ability to incapacitate a vampire by tearing her limbs from her body. You know, it's real creepy. All of a sudden you start referring to vampires as women when you're talking about destroying them. And also, thus, vampires are in no danger from human beings. Oh, of course, because we paltry human beings couldn't possibly do anything to harm a vampire. Why don't you take a look at some of the stuff the U.S. military has these days, Meyer? You'd see that your vampires are not safe and sound from us piddly little humans. Vampires do not develop emotionally or mentally past the age at which they are transformed. That's real creepy. Do you not realize how creepy that is, Meyer? And how creepy you could have written it? And the fact that your precious Edward Cullen is a psychopath, meaning when he was a psycho when he was human too? Nutrition. Vampires do not have a circulatory system. Well, that clearly has everything to do with nutrition. And their bodies are harder than human bodies, but their cells are selectively porous. What are you talking about?
I don't understand anything she says.
This is confusing me. I don't know what she's saying. I don't know what she wants to say. She's just babbling and trying to sound intelligent and just basically just whoosh right over my head because you make this sense. This makes none. Vampires cannot starve to death. I have yet to see any of the limitations you mentioned. If a vampire swallows a solid as subterfuge, that substance will sit in his stomach until he forces it back out through his mouth. You know what would have been a really easier way to say that, Meyer? If a vampire swallows actual human food, it will sit in his stomach until he vomits it back up. You would have sounded a lot less, pretentious and idiotic. Human blood is the most appealing to vampires and hardest to resist. However, they can receive the same nutritional strength from animal blood. Again, it's no great sacrifice, Meyer. Supernatural abilities. If it's science-based, they can't have supernatural abilities. It doesn't work. It's like saying, going through this huge, long... You just went through a huge, long scientific in the broadest sense of the term, explanation of your vampires, and then out of nowhere you're saying a wizard did it! It'd be like Charles Darwin going through and explaining his theory of evolution, and then when someone asked a certain question about it, he would say, well, that was magic. You can't combine these two like that, okay? You can't. It's impossible. Most vampires find their key personality characteristics intensified by the vampire transformation. How does that even work? But more common, very few have supernatural abilities. Supernatural's driving me crazy. More common would be a human with a love of learning becoming a vampire with an insatiable scholarly curiosity, or a human with a deep value for human life to become a vampire with the strength to avoid human blood. Okay, 1. Would you stop talking about how awesome the Cullens are for 1 minute, please? 2, meaning no vampire other than Carlisle ever got turned and and valued human life? Is that what you're saying? That no vampire except Carlisle ever was a human, got turned, and valued human life? Because that's really all I can see here. Which, that's stupid. That's real stupid. She keeps doing that. For example, a human who was very sensitive to other people's moods might develop a vampire ability to read thoughts or influence emotions. I wonder who she's talking about! A human who had some limited precognition might develop into a vampire with a strong ability to see the future. Who could she be talking about? A human with a good instinct for hunting might become a very powerful vampire attractor. I can't tell who she's talking about. It must be just general. The proportion of supernaturally talented vampires, still no dashes by the way, supernaturally talented vampires to normal vampires is greater than the proportion of psychically gifted humans to normal humans. Psychically gifted? Psychically gifted?
From this madness, I've come to understand one thing.
This makes no sense.
You are putting magic in your story when you had him science-based. This is due to the same factor of temperament that results in... What does that even mean? This is due to the same factor of temperament that results in more beautiful humans being selected to become vampires. Pull your hand out of your pants, Meyer. I can hear you all the way over here in Oklahoma. Some vampires actively seek out the gifted in the hope of utilizing that extra ability in their coven. Who could she be talking about? I've always loved superheroes, so the vampires I created actually have a lot more in common with superheroes than horror genre vampires. That's a quote from Stephanie right there at the bottom of this page 73. Yeah, they do have a lot in common with, the Miller Batman right now, Are you dense? Are you retarded? That guy who wanted Robin to eat rats in the Batcave? But I don't remember superheroes. She just called her vampires superheroes. The vast majority are cold-blooded, psychopathic killers, including all of her good guys. Oh yeah, they're superheroes, all right. Especially the Cullens, who turn a blind eye to murders going on in Seattle instead of lifting a damn finger to go do anything, something, to stop it. Oh yeah, they're superheroes. Their goal is apparently just to be left alone.
To be left alone, the goal of every great hero.
Yeah. Talking about newborn vampires, they are marked as physically different by their vibrantly crimson irises, though in other ways they look the same as mature vampires. Their behavior is more diverse than their appearance.
Yes. Of course, I have no idea what you're saying.
I don't know what she's talking about. I'm so lost. I don't get it. I don't. What is she saying? One benefit to the human is that the vampire venom is capable of repairing all kinds of damage to the body. A human who had sustained a crippling injury would be made whole again as a vampire. Who do you think she's talking about? Can you think outside of your actual books, please? Oh, look. There's a whole section devoted to singers. Bacon people. Singers are an individual phenomena. The person whose blood sings for one vampire will not have the same effect on all vampires. So what's the deal with Bella? Everyone wanted to eat her. Okay, I'm in the vampire history section. Talks a little bit about the Romanians. I need to save most of my discussion for the Romanians when we actually get to their section in the Coven part of this book. But here's the deal. The Romanians were apparently before the Volturi. They made no secret of their existence and both preyed on and enslaved humans indiscriminately. You'd think the history books would mention something about that. And I don't mean in the sense that, vampires are real kind of thing, that hunting vampires, that kind of thing. No. This is apparently a huge coven of vampires like the Volturi who ruled in a castle, who were the grand poobahs of all the land, and everyone knew what they were. Yeah, you have fun with that, Meyer. But here's the thing. Just talking about the Volturi. This is what caught my eye. The last paragraph. There are very few vampires alive who predate the Volturi. Most have been born into a world where the laws constructed by the Volturi are an accepted fact of life. This protects the Volturi from the realization that their laws are merely an excuse to exert control over the vampire world. Okay, I've gone into a lot the Volturi want power and control thing enough in that it makes no sense, because what power is to be had, what control is to be had. And I've discussed it here, if you want to read that. It's at the very end of that. I go into the Volturi as bad villains. But, here's the deal. It's more than evident that the Volturi, you can make the argument, if you want, that the books have this whole Mormon thing going on for them, but there are a lot of people who argue that it's not. However, there is one thing, you can't argue with it. It's pretty much text. It's so obvious. The Volturi are a more than evident metaphor for Catholics. And, if you've read my recaps, you know, I'm Catholic. So, to have her say that about her obvious Catholic metaphor offended me greatly. Southern Vampire Wars, it's pretty much just Jasper's story. It's pretty much how he talks right there, which should go to show you just how much that chapter where Jasper explains where he came from sucks so hard. But also, here's the thing. The resulting disappearance and death toll was so alarming to the humans in the area that supernatural causes were suspected and reported, though the epidemic was later blamed on cholera. Desanguinated bodies and mutilated bodies are showing up. People are vanishing and disappearing. It's cholera. Yeah, even though we haven't found anyone who actually has cholera, because when they do show up, they're already dead and maimed, but it's cholera. Clearly cholera. Again, a wizard did it. The vampire law. There's one law! But, which in itself points out how stupid the we want to control the vampire world thing is, if you only have one law. And this is it. This is what doesn't make any sense. If a newborn is abandoned by his creator, a rare occurrence given the ability to create a new vampire. And again, she's back to his now, talking about the creators. That's not creepy at all. For the newborn, though ignorant of the law, is still punishable for any rash acts. Why? How does that work? Is that your way of trying to make the Volturi look like completely harsh and cruel leaders? That just makes them look dumb. Talking about the immortal children. Another aspect of immortal children was their appeal. They were both beautiful and endearing. Covens were utterly devoted to their immortal children and would protect them at all costs. Why? You don't give us a why. They just are. Well, I like to think that if there's an insane blood-sucking baby on the loose, I would have the sense, I'd be sad about it. But the general thing you would need to do with that one is put it down. And also to realize that, and if you can't do it, give it up to the Volturi and let them do it. Because there is a point when the devotion to protect an innocent child ends. This isn't Grace, okay? You can't use the same logic with Grace that you can here. Oh, vampire myths. Apparently the Volturi. Myths circulated by the Volturi include vampires burned by the sun, vampires unconscious during daylight hours, no reflection, harmed by crosses, holy water, and garlic, visible fangs, assumed in the form of a bat, permission to enter a house, killed by a wooden stake, stabbed into their hearts. All the most common ones, mostly centric to Dracula, I've noticed. How about the counting small objects? They spread that one? What about the one where it's a specific kind of stake you have to use? What about that? You didn't mention silver. Some people talk about how vampires are harmed by silver. Beheading! How about that one? Buried at a crossroads. Face down. Did you mention that one? There are a lot more myths on how to kill a vampire than just that, Meyer. There really are. Truth, the Volturi were able to eradicate over time. Vampires have red or black eyes. Back up. Vampires having red eyes was a truth they eradicated. And gold wasn't an option at the time. I'm just gonna pause here. I'm just gonna pause right here. And, cycle through a few pictures. Okay, I'm done. Truths the Volturi were not able to quash. Vampires are flammable. Vampires are pale. Vampires drink blood. Vampires are beautiful. Tell that to the old school vampires. Dating before the Volturi. Before your little universe started. Vampires. The legends of vampires started from corpses. One benefit of the surviving truths is that there are humans who actively seek out vampires in an attempt to gain beauty or immortality. Like Bella. Vampire lifestyles and psychology.
I think that's funny. Because he was a mass-murdering fuckhead.
Meyer still doesn't know what nomad means. She thinks that because the Cullens live in a house on a regular basis, they aren't nomads. No, they up and move a lot. They're just as nomadic as everyone else. The only vampires that we know of that don't move are the Volturi. Bonding factors. Most commonly made up of two members. One feature of the unchanging nature of vampires is that they mate for life. Once they fall in love, that feeling never fades. Because they're more awesome than you. Only the bond between mates is strong enough to survive the competitive nature and drive for blood. Vampires are competitive by nature. Why? Any particular reason for that? They started out as people. Just how much are you saying they change? Are they not themselves anymore at all, ever? Or is their entire personality erased? And talking about how they keep covens together without killing themselves, because apparently once you turn into a vampire, you aren't you anymore, ever. The pursuit of power is that bonding cause for vampires to make sure they don't kill each other and secure the group as a whole. What power? What power? You ever gonna answer that? Oh my god. Another big reading time, guys. Settle in. The third and rarest bonding force is the vampire conscience. Very few vampires are born with or develop a value for human life. The consumption of human blood is such a known aspect of vampire life that few ever question it. The driving thirst for human blood seems irresistible. However, those who do learn to value human life in spite of this reality are able to subsist on animal blood. Vampires who live this way are sometimes referred to as vegetarians. Animal blood is unappealing to vampires, and thus a difficult diet to maintain. Those who make the sacrifice, though, experience related benefits. In the absence of human blood, the competitive drive disappears. Vampires are able to form bonds of love in addition to the bond between mates. The weak coven alliance is replaced by a strong, family-style union. You know how I often tear my own face off in my recaps because I get so mad? It's because I facepalm as hard as I just did. I'm not sure what more I could say here. I've gone into it a lot. Mrs. Hyde has gone into it a lot. If you've read the recaps, you know my opinion on this. And it's more than obvious just what a load that is right there. I think it's the very few vampires are born with or develop a value for human life. In other words, a conscience is that gets to me the most. I think that's the line that sticks out. Really sticks out. Because she's just outright saying every vampire ever turned doesn't give a damn. Which means they were that way as people. Because she said up there, a human who values human life, it will carry over into the vampirism. There's no other human in the world who does that. But also, she pretty much just admitted that her precious Edward is not one of them. Very few vampires are born with or develop a value for human life. And what did he do 10 years after being turned because he resented Carlisle curbing his diet? He ran off and murdered hundreds of people. As I said, Edward's not one of them. I really don't have anything else to say to that. I've said it all before. I've said how it's not a sacrifice. I've said how they don't have a conscience. If they did, they'd value human life, but they don't. They don't care at all. And all this ridiculous wanking, you can't see it, but I am so making a wanking gesture with my hand. The bonds of love and weak coven alliance, strong family-style union. She's just sitting here, wanking over the Cullens, in what is supposed to be a general overview of her vampire species as a whole. I've just reached one of those stages where I'm just quietly indignant and enraged. I don't have anything else to say. I'm moving on to the next one, which is vengeance. She has a whole segment devoted to vampire vengeance, talking about how vampires are not forgiving. So that's why we constantly have all the Cullens and constantly being, oh, we forgive you for this and that and the other. This just makes no sense. It's mostly about because vampires always attack and kill whoever killed their mate. That's all this is, which, that's just as dumb. The last section is all about vampire hybrids, which means this section is now probably going to be nothing but wanking over precious Renesmee. Oh boy! I really want to read a whole section devoted to talking about how great Renesmee Carly Cullen is. Out of the thousands of vampires on the planet, there are only 5 known hybrids in existence, and these 5 all originated from only 2 sources. Only 5 in existence. The 5 you mentioned in canon. I love in her effort to make sure that we all know that Edward and Bella are the most uniquest and specialistest and amazingest people on the planet. She just tosses reality right out the window. You're telling me that never, ever has a vampire ever fallen in love with a human like Edward did? Or that a vampire got some nookie with a human and knocked her up on accident, but left, never found out. You're telling me it's never happened. Ever. Would it kill you to Google half vampire for once? That's a very, very big legend and myth and story, the Dhampir. If it's so prevalent in literature and in mythology, why would there be only 5 in existence in reality? Your story is set in this reality. You have to abide by those rules, honey. Only one mother has ever survived to become a vampire after the birth. Who could she be talking about? Oh, I wonder. After roughly 7 years, the hybrid reaches physical adulthood. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, Meyer. Age 17 is not physical adulthood. Physical adulthood is in the 20s. I know. Terrible. 20. Oh! Your life is pretty much over. 17 is not physical adulthood, okay? Don't you say that to me. A hybrid has the mental capacity of an adult human by the time of her birth. I'm really glad this section is over now, because I can close this book. And I can tell you to keep that line in mind. And remind you that Jacob imprinted on her when she was 5 minutes old. And she's constantly calling him her Jacob. Meyer just confirmed that Renesmee, when she was a baby, knew and probably wanted Jacob's big old furry wiener. Have a nice night, folks. I'm gonna go throw up now.